being considered an unauthorized boarder by the HOA, posted by Motive Labras, with updates and drama in the comments. Well, over a decade ago, I was forced to move back in with my dad. I was only planning to stay a few months till I was financially stable enough to get my own place once again. But my dad insisted that I stay rent-free while I got my car paid off and some serious dental work done. This lasted 4 years. My dad owns a really nice place in a subdivision that had an HOA. For about 2 of those 4 years, things went fine, until a woman who I shall aptly call Karen became head of the HOA. Me and Karen had many unfortunate run-ins in the past. She would constantly ask my dad how long until I move out. Then she would always report me and my dad to the HOA for the silliest things, which the HOA would usually ignore or at best dismiss after getting our side of the story. But now that she was in control, she took direct action. The first was to declare me an unauthorized boarder after instituting a bylaw that all adults 21 and older in a household have to be registered with the HOA as a permanent resident with a minimum of 5 years that they have to stay without penalizing the homeowner. My dad refused to do any such thing because I would eventually be getting my own place. But Karen insisted, even serving him 2 years of backdated penalties for having me there. My dad ended up having to spend money on a lawyer to send her a cease and desist order because I was legally grandfathered in since I was there before the bylaw. Of course, the fines were begrudgingly dropped, but afterwards, she would try to nickel and dime my dad with constant little things like me being out at all hours of the night, well, I worked late, or the way I dressed in public being inappropriate, jeans and a band t-shirts mostly, and other stupid crap that most of which weren't in the bylaws. She even took to using a selfie stick over the fence to see if there was anything in the backyard violating the rules. I since moved out of there, and a year or so later, Karen was voted out of the HOA after ticking off the wrong people. Update and drama. One commenter asked OP, "I'd like to know what person held the gun to your head and said that you must move back in with your dad. Chances are, it sounds like you messed up in life, and this was the easy and convenient thing for you to do. Yes, this HOA was bad, but do a bit of self-reflecting and come to terms with the fact that this wouldn't have even been a thing if it wasn't for your life decisions." And OP fires back with, "Nice to know you're freaking psychic. If you must know, there was some bad blood between me and my at-the-time roommate's psychopath, now ex-wife, and it got to the point that I didn't feel safe living in the same apartment with her. The lease had to be broken, and it drained me out of a ton of cash. My pop was good enough to give me a temporary roof over my head. Otherwise, I'd be homeless. I was only planning on spending a couple months at my pop's place till I was on my feet, but he insisted that I stay until my car was paid off and I got some much-needed dental work done." Crazy story, and be sure not to assume things about people's situation, right? You know what they say that makes you. HOA asking for personal funds to repay a loan? Help! Posted by Quiet Excitement 365. I recently purchased a condo in a community governed by a homeowners association, or HOA, about a month ago, and now I find myself facing a concerning situation. The HOA is asking all residents, including myself, to contribute a lump sum of money to repay a massive $1.6 million loan. Here's some background info. The current reserve fund stands at $1.3 million, which includes the special assessment funds and all asset accounts. Apparently, a previous assessment was conducted in 2021, which I wasn't a part of, to repay the reserves for the down payment of the loan. The intention was to increase the budget gradually, hoping that, over time, we could repay the loan. Unfortunately, due to multiple water-related issues within the neighborhood, the reserves were never replenished, and the increasing budget couldn't cover the remaining 3/4 of the loan. Now, the HOA is proposing this special assessment solely to cover the remaining portion of the loan owed to the bank. If approved, I am being told that the funds raised from this assessment will be held in a designated account and used for monthly payments to the bank until March 2027, ensuring accountability regardless of any management or board changes. The idea is that this special assessment allows homeowners to finance the completed improvement using a fixed-term loan at a relatively low interest rate of 3.5%, as opposed to permanently increasing homeowner dues. Is this normal? Secondly, the HOA has presented us with a dire warning. Without this special assessment or significant budget increases exceeding 30%, they claim our community cash flow projection for the next 12 months is grim, and the HOA could run out of money. They argue that reduced funds on the balance sheet and income statement would negatively impact potential buyers who require substantial reserve funds for mortgage approval. What? I wish they could all pay it off with what they have right now, but OP, I do not envy you in this situation, and I hope that you guys can stand your ground against this HOA. HOA harassing me over security cameras and lights, posted by Bearded Trucker. My wife and I bought a house in an HOA back in May of 2020. We bought it from family and was told the HOA is very relaxed, to say the least. Basically, pay your dues and submit the proper documentation when doing major changes to the house and landscaping. We received the rules and regulations when we bought the house, and it was very generic, nothing in it mentioning security cameras and motion lights. Well, this past Monday, my father-in-law and I finally installed 2 security cameras and lights. We had to run new electric lines due to the house not coming with the doorbell. Tuesday afternoon, we received a warning about modifications to the house without prior approval. We already had 4 motion sensor lights up months prior to installing the camera. Well, I figured they just want a statement or something similar to explain why we put up the new system. I submit the statement and I don't hear anything back for a couple of days. The response I finally got was that the cameras needed to be removed, paperwork submitted, and then they can be reinstalled. After spending 6 hours running wire and installing the system, I'm not pulling it down, and I will not be changing anything until I get a response to my submission. If it wasn't mentioned in the rules and the regulations, I figure they really don't have a leg to stand on in general. Now to summarize, we have 4 motion sensor lights and 2 cameras. It's a single family home. I think they are just giving me pushback due to me trying to get them to equally enforce a ban on commercial vehicles. Very interesting comment. HOAs hate private security cameras because they like to screw with people's property up when they aren't around to teach them a lesson. They prefer to put security cameras all over the neighborhood that are under their control, so the footage can be corrupted anytime it's useful. Also, so they can use them to spy on everyone and make sure they're following the Führer's decrees. You worthless proles are the ones paying for these cameras, by the way, with your monthly dues. I seriously have no idea why HOAs aren't classified as a protection racket. I don't know about you, but security cameras are a good thing to have in a neighborhood, not a bad one. What do you think? This next HOA story is special. It's a complete middle finger to the HOA, and it's really funny too, and it was told in my comment section in a video. Let's call it, "I'll Fix Your Wagon." I used to live in an HOA. It was one of 2 condos with a fenced-in backyard. I needed a tree removed because the HOA was in charge of keeping the buildings and the exterior of the property up to HOA standards. They refused to pay to have the tree removed and put it in writing that everything that went on in my backyard was my responsibility. I thought to myself, I'll fix your wagon. I removed the tree at my expense. I then planted a crooked willow tree. Since my water bill was covered in my HOA dues and willow trees drink a lot of water, the hose was on almost all the time. I then planted some dwarf fruit trees, put in a faux lawn. I didn't want to mow it. I had a huge screened-in gazebo built. I also painted the exterior walls a pastel green up to the belly band. Our condos were 2-story units, main living areas downstairs, and the bedroom and bathroom upstairs, half bath downstairs. The belly band I painted was a nice mauve color. I used to sunbathe in my fenced-in backyard with a 6-foot-high cedar fence. I went to an HOA meeting and someone complained about the colors that I painted the back of my condo. They complained about the willow tree, which was growing larger than they wanted, and someone else complained about a man sunbathing in his backyard. I told the HOA that whatever I chose to do in my fenced-in backyard was my business, and they couldn't do anything about it. I had copies of the signed paperwork stating that I could do anything I wanted in my backyard. Furthermore, I wanted the name of the person complaining about my sunbathing because they would have to look over my 6-foot fence to see my backyard, and therefore they were peeping Toms and I wanted them arrested. The HOA apologized, and after that I did whatever I wanted. Upon leaving that meeting, I simply said, "Don't you think it would have been better if you would have just removed that tree to begin with? You tried to save a few bucks but screwed yourselves in the end." I have since sold my condo, and last summer I drove past my old condo and noticed that the willow tree was about 50 feet tall and more than shaded my backyard. I just laughed and kept on driving. Yep, I fixed their wagon. If that's just not a malicious compliance middle finger slap in the face to the HOA, I don't know what is. Way to go, and thank you for sharing that story. I thoroughly enjoyed it. This story has an update. It's called "Left for Work This Morning. Neighbor demanded I park in my driveway so that she could have more room in the morning waiting on the school bus with her child." Posted by Cakes and Games 90. Said child is at least in middle school because that's the bus that runs the time that I'm leaving for work. And I would know, as I taught at the middle school in the district the last 3 years before moving on to a new one. First, I hate bus stop parents. Why? Because they litter. They just toss trash out their windows into our lawn like they own the place. They also wait outside our house with their music blaring, and they're always out at the bus stop 15 to 20 minutes early. Then they block your mailbox or driveway with their cars. So, I already do not like these people. Their kids aren't even annoying, just the adults. But we parked on the street this weekend, which is unusual for us. We did it because we are building a fence and have stuff in our driveway for it. This is the first time since I've lived here for over a year that I've ever left my car on the street overnight. Random lady pulls up behind me and stops me as I'm loading in my things for work and says our vehicles are in the way of parents waiting on the bus for their kids. She said that we should park in our driveway and leave the road open for parents. Didn't ask, just said, "Tomorrow these spaces will be open for parents, okay?" Then I just walked away. So, needless to say, we will be parking on the street until further notice. My husband has 2 trucks, so that means even more room will be taken. Update: parked on the street, got the stank look from the same person. She drove past and looked our vehicles up and down and shook her head. She ended up parking on the main street instead. Ours is off the main street in the neighborhood, so we don't get all the traffic from people going to work. We just have a corner lot. Fun fact about one of my husband's trucks though, it's a work truck from his company. So, anytime you have to use public parking, such as street parking, you have to put a cone 5 feet in front and one 5 feet behind it per company policy, even if you're at your house. This Karen is crazy. What do you think? The HOA takes over, destroys my property, but I'm not even part of the HOA, with updates. Click the video on your screen. You don't want to miss the crazy fallout of this one, and I'll see you there.